Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another eMarketer Tech Talk, where we host amazing guests from all areas of media, ad tech, and MarTech. I'm Jeremy Goldman, Senior Director of Client Briefings at eMarketer, and today we will be learning how to grow and activate a privacy-compliant first-party data strategy that drives personalized customer experiences and long-term business growth. So joining me is Arshdeep Sood, Principal Solutions Engineer at OneTrust. Hi, Arshdeep.
Hi, Jeremy. Such a pleasure to be with you on this today.
Oh, likewise. I'm really looking forward to my conversation with you in a little bit. Before that, though, Arshdeep will be sharing an overview of consent strategies, and I will follow up with some questions on my mind. And afterwards, we will be opening it up for Q&A. So, very important, use that chat window on the right to submit questions and to communicate with other audience members. So with that, Arshdeep, over to you.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm certainly intrigued on what questions you have for me. I know I have a lot of content to go through, so I encourage everyone to post their questions as well, and we can get to those. Something to call out here that I really want all of us to focus on building a consent strategy that is privacy first in focus. And that's the plan for what I have in agenda today with you all. A quick introduction for me. I am working with OneTrust in a privacy solution engineering capacity. What this truly means is I'm helping organizations understand as a business where they stand, what are they working on, and what kind of data they're using. Are they using it responsibly? And then provide them with strategic ideas and how they can improve that for long-term success. And a lot of what I do in this role as a principal SE is what I have compiled for you, and I'm going to run through real quick. So I encourage you to grab that coffee right now and stay with me for the next 20 minutes. As part of the agenda, we'll cover a lot of ground, but I want to make sure that we hit a lot of key points, and that's what I'll focus on towards the end, which is some key takeaways. But what this agenda looks like is we'll first understand why do we even need consent? Why does it matter? How does it apply to you in the space of media tech and martech? Then we'll dive into some strategies around opt-in rate optimization, followed by strategies and how do you build an omni-channel consent capture journey for a person-based experience where you know who this individual is. We'll then discuss how do you activate all of these consents throughout your customer profiles and your infrastructure and ensure that you're governing the data sets accordingly. To start off, the key point that every customer asks me when we hop on a call, be it a consumer to your business or businesses themselves, is we all thrive on data as organizations, but are organizations truly using this responsibly? And there was actually a study run on that where customers were asked if the organizations you work with or give the data to, do you trust that they are using it truthfully in a compliant fashion and responsible fashion? And the respondents said that 33% of them felt yes, my companies that I am offering my data to use it responsibly. That's a staggering two-thirds that either think they do not or they don't even know and don't even understand why that's the case. And that's something you want to change. A lot of effort has already been made on the global scale to ensure that consumers whose data you're actually operating off of is being managed in a very responsible fashion. The first one was the expanding regulations. 75% of the world will be covered by privacy laws by the end of this year. That is a big chunk of the geography that we all know of. 50% already have lost fidelity of using third-party cookies. This ties into the whole conversation around, is third-party cookies going away? Is it staying? Is it a privacy sandbox? Is it auto-expiring in 7 days? Technology providers who offer browsers, who offer mobile devices and application stores have already made significant changes in a privacy-first fashion, which as organizations you need to align with. And then the last one, which is my personal favorite, is consumers want personalization. They really, really want to not have to look around as much and just have that instant gratification that I thought of something, I want this, and it's exactly what's sitting in my inbox. And they are 69% more likely to purchase from a brand that can personalize. But to do that, you need to align with the consent management strategies and the requirements of the regulations and technology changes that have come along. Just to give you an idea, since usually this is a legal compliance team slide where they bring in this big book and say, all these regulations have changed and we want you to think about this. And here's all the other organizations getting fined. As marketers, if you are marketing or working in the media ad tech space for the audiences that are in these geographies, you are required to change your strategy. Each year, there have been over 4,500 critical updates globally being made to these regulations. That's about 12 every single day. At this point in time, even though we started in 2020 through COVID with the California Consumer Privacy Act, today we're looking at over 19 different laws being in effect across geographies and states within the US. That's a major chunk. And even if you don't want to see the list on the left, just looking at the dark green on this slide gives you an understanding of most of the population is already being governed under one or the other regulation. And as the team who is typically known to bring in the ROI, the true revenue, you want to capitalize on these trends. You must want to start creating value for the end user through leveraging their own choices, giving them the power back and saying, you tell us what you'd like to hear about. What are the options that you prefer? A lot of walled gardens have kept you away from all these changes, and the whole third party cookies going away was a big conversation across organizations because the fidelity of the information that you were going to collect, the audiences, the segments, the insights that you were going to get were going to shift drastically, which is why building and investing in your own first party data set is a great idea. And at the end, collect data that can personalize the user's experience further. What this means is something as small as we would like to send you a newsletter as a nuclear option could be changed into we'd like to send you a newsletter. How about a newsletter on products? If you are in retail, would you prefer apparel versus footwear versus accessories? Something that granular can also ensure that you are personalizing to the end user's needs and also at the same time, through your engagement with them, collecting insights right in time to evaluate your own first party data sets and your audiences better. All great consumer experiences to date have been heavily dependent on data. And to ensure that this is being delivered in the best possible way moving forward, there are a few key things you want to ensure that you're working through. And the first one is data transparency. As part of responsible data use, it essentially involves informing the end user of what data you're collecting, how are you collecting it, and how it's being used in the backend. This is going to help you build brand trust and deliver not only a personalized experience, but also ensure that you can collect more data responsibly into the future. Responsible data use also ensures, when you think of the strategy, that the personalization that you're delivering is informed by the user instead of any formats of dark patterns that you might have or using data for purposes beyond what it was originally exchanged for. And the products and services that you would deliver through that would help drive a lot more loyalty than otherwise. And when you're thinking about data is everywhere, we have so many teams. How do we really do it? Something to think about, on the contrary, is if data is everywhere, then it has to be used responsibly at every single step. So each team that manages data, it could be the front end where you're collecting information through the UX or in-person engagement. You want to ensure you have transparency there at the point of collection. If you're now collecting it and porting it into a system where it's held, it could be CRM, CDP, MDM, and others. You want to ensure that it's being held and processed in the way that you have disclosed upfront. There has to be responsible processes in place of exchanging data with vendors or service providers. Say I make a purchase from your web property, and now you are going to go ahead and partner with one of the delivery services to send this across, and you're sharing my delivery address with them. It has to be in the scope of what it was originally subscribed to by the end user. The same applies to if you're looking to add to how you're going to use that data that I had consented for, you need to remember the scope and collect new consent if required for that same journey. There's an idea of storing the data in a responsible fashion, which aligns to your controls, your security protocols, and others. And the disposition of the data when you go through data deletion requests or archiving mechanisms in place for your compliance and audit trails. You want to follow through on what not only have you committed, but also the best practices defined by organization internally. In short, instead of worrying about the entire cycle, just make sure while making a privacy promise, you should tell them what should happen. And then while you're delivering your privacy promise, you actually ensure it is what happens. Once you understand this concept and share it with your team members, the next stage is very easy: opt-in rate optimization. Now, modern organizations do rely on customer data to create business value. That's the currency we have all been looking for. And every single interaction with the user is an opportunity to get data. But your lens has to shift from my currency is not just data, but the trust I build with this user when I'm collecting and exchanging data and delivering personalization. And you can do this in two different formats. The users that show up on your web properties or engage with you could be one of two types. The first one here is the device-based user, where you don't know who they are. They're just browsing your website or mobile application. The other is they know or they identify themselves, and you maybe have a loyalty program with them or they signed up for a newsletter, and your journey could be completely different. When you think of the consent management strategies for these, organizations could be starting on either side or working on both. So there are two key terms that are currently being used within the industry at this point for solutions around that. The first one is a CMP, which is a consent management platform. It's a baseline banner, the cookie prompts that you typically get on a website or in a mobile app where you're providing consent to opt in or out of targeting, analytics, pixels dropping, retargeting, all of that processing that can be run on the web property or within the application without identifying yourself. That's what a CMP helps you collect consent for and propagate and activate. Versus a UCPM solution is a universal consent and preference management solution. This is where you know the user, you are providing them a universal consent management experience where you dive into not just any trackers on the web or mobile, but also their marketing consents, their do not call lists, their do not SMS, I want to receive sales call, I want to connect with service agents. All of those are part of the same profile in a way. So from a privacy-centric experience build perspective, we'll first start out with the device-based experience where you really want to evolve just beyond the cookie banner. I would say pre-pandemic, websites were the biggest conversation. We need a cookie banner. We are releasing all of these websites. We need consent for that. A lot of it was driven by GDPR, CCPA, and others. But at this point, it's an expectation from the consumer. If you're a brand who doesn't do this, it's a question mark on, are you actually using my data responsibly? And consumers are very hyper aware about this in today's day and age. And these experiences are now being used across not just web, but mobile and CTV, because every person in today's time has at least one cell phone, is using a laptop or a PC for their day-to-day work. They have smart TVs that are embedded onto their living rooms or in casual areas where they really want to engage and get time with their family. So to ensure that you're not continually prompting them for more consent, but honoring it across the board becomes a very big key aspect of the journey orchestration. And there are a few ways to optimize the yeses that you get on there, which is your opt-ins. The first one is an A/B test. This is where you can really generate variants of the designs and how these shows up. Should it be in the center? Should it be in the bottom? Should it be just a link in the footer? And you can evaluate the performance of each to get you the opt-in rates through a report that's generated out at the end of the day or through the timeline that you have run this test for. And then you can go ahead and release what best works for your audience. So if you're a retail organization versus you are into financial, finances or financial tech, banking, healthcare, and others, your experiences could be completely different. You could go ahead and get generic, hey, Arshdeep, what's the opt-in rate improvements we could see? You would have numbers out there through multiple surveys, but what works for you, for your own audience, could be completely different. And that's where an A/B test on these experiences adds a lot of value. Similarly, when I talk about, hey, there are regulations and every regulation is different, let's geo-target that someone coming in from California sees an opt-out versus someone coming from EU sees an opt-in. There are now consumers who are hyper aware and they're going about adding these global privacy control signals onto their website saying, we do not want to have any data being processed. For those users, you can use audience logic where somebody who does not have it turned on sees the standard experience versus someone who does could see a banner right in the center that says, hey, we see you, we understand, you care. Here are all other options. Here's a link to a privacy policy. So you can really expand your journey throughout with them and build a relationship that you otherwise might not with someone you don't know through a digital experience. The last one here is authenticated consent journeys, where you have a user that you might know, maybe they logged in, and you want to synchronize their consent across the board. They were on web, now they're going to the mobile app and they're scrolling through the application options. What we can do is we can remember those choices and ensure they're not being re-prompted. You eliminate consent fatigue, and those choices are honored at every instance in time. So for web, they could go ahead and interact with the web cookie banner. Those choices can be remembered, and then you can copy that over to when they return on the mobile application identified. You can honor those choices, and then the exact same could be for a CTV app that you release. In these experiences, you do get to notify the end user that we have already synchronized your preferences. So that circles back to the transparency conversation that I was having earlier, that ensure the user knows what's happening and then deliver the experience, the personalization that they expect out of you. This is exactly the moment when now you know the user, you can dive into the universal consent world, where you are really focused on your person-based consent management and privacy-centric customer experience. Typically, this experience requires you to think about all the channels through which this user could be coming in and managing a centralized way of consent collection so that your data sets in the backend are best activated. Now, on the left is what I see most of the organizations do when I walk into the room as a solutions engineer, where I'm like, how are you collecting data? And they say, well, we have data everywhere and we have consent. It's a flag in a system. My CRM has one flag against the profile, and my marketing automation does too. And it's all disparate. And the changes do come through, but they are honored in that system. And there's a very not confirmed mechanism of activating across the entire data set. The consumer doesn't care how many systems you have. They just care you stop emailing or you email on a topic. So that's where when you involve the universal consent and preference management application layer, it activates your entire network based on the one choice the user might have given through one of these locations or all of these locations. And what this does is it builds a unified consent experience, not just for the user, but also for you. Why businesses need this is one, they get a unified view into what does my audience really care for? What are they saying yes to? What are the granular preferences they like or dislike? They can now also accurately inform their backend stack to honor those consents and ensure every system that needs to know does know this. And then if somebody walks through the door, be it the user asking you a question on, hey, I asked you to not email me, why are you still doing that? Or vice versa, a regulator or a civil rights action comes through, you are able to answer that question. And all of this can be done through a very seamless strategy. You capture, manage, and enforce consented data. The keyword here is consented data. Any data you collect can only be processed based on the consent that you have received from the end user, or there's a legitimate interest your business has defined against it. So if the user has interacted through a web form or has updated consents through a preference center, all of this can be recorded in the centralized OneTrust repository as an example, and then activated across your tech stack while uniquely building the user's progressive profile so you have a 360 view. And building a unified profile can actually be extended from the unknown user world into the known user world. So that means when I am just an anonymous user on the website, I choose my cookies and trackers, but then I realize I can create an account and there's an inherent benefit of being a loyal member with you. I come in, I create an account. Now you know who this person is. You can remember my do not sell decision that I do not want my data to be shared. That's the CMP part against that identifier. And then also activate that for not just your any exchanges for email lists and others, but also offer them more opportunity to sign up for things that could be emails, SMS, notifications, content, events, newsletters, and whatnot. So you can really build a holistic journey for the end user and ensure that you use that consent to activate the data sets such that you are reaching out to these end users through the right channel with the right message at the right time. These apply not just for collecting consent, which is your transparency side, but also the personalization that you deliver after. So, an example could be somebody signing up for a clinical trial. This is a healthcare example here. The user can say, I'd like to volunteer and just submit the form, or they could also be offered the opportunity to sign up for marketing communications from your healthcare business, where they could pick and choose in a granular fashion what they'd like. That's one UI interface of consent. Another could be a preference center where they can go and see all the granular choices you would like to offer to this persona type. A newsletter subscriber might just need to see three. A loyal customer who's registered might want to see seven. You could customize those UIs and deliver those options so you're collecting that. And as you collect those, we can ensure that as we start centralizing this, all of your backend applications know it, so you're personalizing that data. Which brings us to the last segment, activating your customer 360 profiles. Consent is going to unlock a key value of the data that you have on file, even for your AI initiatives as a business. If you don't have consent for that data to be used for AI, you really can't use it for AI. There have been organizations which have been questioned for that. And as you get more consent through the data that you receive over time, you can ensure that the profiles that you build within the universal consent journey gives you keen insight about the user on what they like or dislike for data processing. You can use that to in real time impact the decisions that you make on the data that is truly being processed. So customer service agents reaching out or other businesses reaching out. And I would say for these decisions specifically, just ensure that you know what your true purpose as the marketing team is when you start out. It could be I want to activate my AEP instance and go ahead and just inform that of the user's choices. So now the profiling, the data that we are collecting is associated with the consent on file. Or maybe you have a snowflake instance where the user data lives, but different teams like internal and external marketing teams come in and access the table so that they can now reach out to the user. Based on the user's consent, you can now ensure that the right team has access to the data. So if I say no access to my credit card number, none of the teams get it. I would like to opt out as John. I don't want any marketing from the internal marketing team. You are ensuring his name doesn't show up on that list, which or the table that marketing gets access to, and so on and so forth. And what you truly do with this exercise is ensure that all of the work that you build as a marketing team is built on responsible use of data that has been consented to and a trust that lives with the consumer that you have worked with throughout these interfaces. So I'll close my section out with this final note from Miller and Earl, where they went ahead and said that oftentimes privacy laws seem counterintuitive for what marketers are trying to accomplish. Yet, if we look at our marketing initiatives to build trust, then we win as a company. By providing transparency and choice around consent and preferences, Miller Knoll not only stands out from the crowd as a marketing engine, but also as a global enterprise in today's shifting regulatory landscape. So if none of what I said helped you, just know that this is the key takeaway. Trust is the key. That's the new currency, and as marketing teams, you have a lot of power to build that. I'll wrap it up and over to you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Arshdeep. That was great. So many different questions and so many different places I can begin here. So I'll just jump in with this. Okay, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that organizations that you're speaking to might still have about consent management and first-party data strategy?
Misconceptions are many. It really is dependent on which team am I talking to. Since our audience is primarily in the marketing space, I would say the first misconception your teams might have is it really our job or does it live with legal and compliance to build something out like that? It is a collective job. Consent management is directly tied to responsible data use, and you are the team members enabling data collection to enable revenue generation. So ensure that you are part of these conversations. And the second biggest misconception that I have seen implemented is just an unsubscribe link or one checkbox that, yes, I'd like to get emails from your brand, unsubscribe me. And you're like, good, we have been unsubscribed. Your true advantage lives in first party data sets that you can build and the preferences you can collect. So, growing into the mentality of, I'm not going to wait for third party cookies to go away. I'm going to build this and I'm going to collect consent against the products, the services, the topics, the content that I can truly offer so users can be granular in their choices would truly enable you as a business.
Okay, so let's go through maybe a real world example, building on that point where smart consent orchestration led to measurable marketing success. Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's what a lot of organizations are really focused on, right?
Yes, absolutely. There have been so many surveys over the years where I'm trying to recall the exact numbers here. There was one where they were talking about how they had about 65, 68% opt-in rates because users would unsubscribe quite often through the engagements or the emails that would be sent out. And then through implementing a preference center where somebody could go in and have a granular choice, they improved it to over 80%, where the users would retain because now a business can have multiple layers of brands or multiple verticals. Not everybody understands. I received a investor relations email and I say I would like to unsubscribe from emails. Does that apply that I want to be unsubscribed from all emails from the brand or just investor relations or just the Black Friday sale offers that you're sending? So being that granular has really worked out. And my personal favorite has been these mature organizations that invested time in GDPR days and have grown ever since is a trust center. They have these UIs where the user can go not only see their preferences, but also manage their privacy rights requests. Go ahead and submit one if they'd like. They can review the privacy statement. They can action certain requests. So it really is a one-stop shop for the end user. And it gives a lot of power out to them, which in turn gives you a lot of power to insights.
So we just talked about a lot about the ideal situation for a marketer, but what does an ideal consent journey look like from the customer's perspective, and how do you design for that?
As a customer, every time I think of that piece, I just try to recall all my scrolling that I do on my phone or my device every single day. So for me, it's always been about, and I think all of you would relate as consumers, get out the marketer's mindset and think of you scrolling the websites and going around. All you really want is transparency. You want context around what's going on and how would I benefit through it. And I would personally want to feel respected that if you have told me this is how you would do it, you would actually follow through with it. So, an example journey for me would be I go to a website, I see the cookie banner. I understand that you're being transparent, that you'll process personal information and in certain ways. And I can opt out or opt in from that based on what the regulations grant me or what as a user I prefer. Following up on that, maybe we all do these freemium, premium experiences sometimes, right? Like, hey, sign up and get a 10% off, or sign up and you'd get these are the benefits. I like context. I want to see the context of if I give you my data, what do I get in return and how would you use it? And that's where those granular choices example that I said that you would send me emails, but it would be tied to the offers of the season and the products that you offer for this reason. And then the respectful part is, say I opt out. I tell you I would not like to hear from you on this specific topic. I don't have to wait a month before I stop receiving emails from you. In this digitized world where you can send money on the go, which is hard cash if you think of it, you want the end user's choices to be honored right away. And that's something that is part of the onus that lives with the marketing and the tech stack that works on it. So just honoring what you, or at least tell me it would take 30 days so I know what's happening.
Yeah, and that's, I feel like, a really great way to not lose the customer's trust and their engagement in the first place. But obviously, every business has a situation where you've got to re-engage inactive users. So, what strategies have you seen work for re-engaging those types of users, but still, of course, in a privacy compliant way?
In terms of re-engaging end users, I'd say a lot of what you do the first time around can actually be leveraged in every next engagement that you're trying to do. A lot of it could be event trigger based communications, providing clear values. So sometimes what I've seen, and it's very interesting that hey, if I unsubscribe or I say I don't want to be a member anymore, about two or and I've not opted out from SMS or notifications, I would get an email saying, hey, if you come back, if you join our loyalty membership, here are some discounts or offers that you would get. You are able to do that because you have consent on file that I said, I don't want to be a member, but I'd still like to know from you. So the data and the consent that you have on file is a very powerful thing. And to re-engage with the users, you can use the fact that you have collected consent for a specific purpose and how you can really redeem yourselves through that experience. And the other example that I gave you for inactive users in or users that are not necessarily engaging as much or are going to just nuclearly unsubscribe, give them the preference center. Tell them that, hey, we understand you don't want all the content, but here's a unique preference center. Here are the choices you can make so that the next time you see content from us wants you to engage with us. We want to deliver what you care for instead of what we want to just send out because we're all about ourselves. So it's a very different mindset that we want to be in. And you can use like the soft opt-in strategies as well when somebody shows up at retail stores. Hey, it's been a while, we've not seen you. How's it going? Okay, would you like to sign back up for these rewards? It would be great. Here's the benefit. Like that value exchange always is what end users are looking for.
So I feel like obviously it sounds like increased data transparency is on the rise. It's something that is advisable, that's very clear. But what advice would you give to brands that are facing resistance, either internally or from customers? I don't know why, but like there are some out there around increased data transparency.
Yeah, I'd say come join more sessions like these on eMarketer and other locations. Like these are great platforms. And why they are great platforms is because they offer education. They offer ability to understand what's happening and what's working. And a lot of questions that Jeremy you just posed are going to enable a lot of team members to understand how they can unlock their teams. So my advice, if you are seeing any resistance internally or externally, you want to focus on data transparency right out the gate that we know where our data lives. Here's the data. Here's how we're using it. End user, are you okay with it? If you already have it on file and you never consented to it, vice versa. You consented to this. This is what we are doing, and this is how we'll operate on it. And if there are team members internally who think of it as just a legal checkbox or just a mechanism to disrupt the user's seamless experience that we have optimized to build over the past 10 years, it is not true. If you do not have it, if you don't trust me, go read the surveys and the reports. People are ready to take their business to another brand. There are too many brands, there's competition every single place. And when I say trust is the new currency, it's truly because I would personally want to stay with the business that understands me, has understood me over the years, and doesn't do anything that's dark in patterns beyond what I have approved and consented to. So you really want to have that education, that dialogue with your team members and activate them accordingly.
And then I've got one more question before we get to Q&A. We've had some really good ones thrown in there, but this is your last call to drop some in for us. So I look forward to seeing those in a second. I just want to finish up with asking you this. We've talked a lot about like this is the state of consent management. But looking ahead, what emerging trends or regulatory shifts should marketers be preparing for this year and beyond?
I think everybody is expecting me to say this, so I'll just say it out first. AI. We all. Are you not surprised, Jeremy? You were. So AI-driven personalization is the next big chat. Every conference, every trade show, every customer call I've been on, everybody's asking me about it. And I kind of alluded to this early on, but the data that enables your AI to be truly special and great for your customers and deliver the personalization that you want has to be quality data. And the best way to do that is if, one, you start investing in your own first party data set and not relying on third party cookies. Second is you get those preferences into your systems instead of just, yes, I consent to marketing. Yes, I consent to marketing for this specific product or this specific season or this specific engagement channel, any of it. What that does is it ensures that the data that goes into not just training your models, but also informing the results moving forward can give you the best results. So that's an emerging trend. We had the EU AI Act that went into effect. I wouldn't be surprised if next time I join you guys and I have another slide that just has half of the US covered with AI regulations. So that's there. From a technology trend perspective, I would also say there's this whole idea of dynamic consent or consent granularity where you're not like this is what one of our customers did. They're not waiting up on users to go into a preference center to give that consent or choose granular options. They're doing it up front. So with the web forms that somebody submits, they have kind of gamified it. They make it so fun that you go ahead and you give your choices. And you could do that upfront, and now they have informed the personalization right out the gate through consented data because the user was interested in, and now you see and get delivered what you'd like. It's kind of like the new suggestions you would see, like, hey, we think this is what you'd like to see next on Netflix. Kind of like
Mhm.
that. So you could do that with consented data.
So I know we could go a lot further in that, but that was really great. Thank you for such an insightful conversation. And we've got quite a few questions, so let's get straight to the Q&A. I think a few people had some interest in something along these lines. So do you have, not to stump you, but do you have kind of an average percent of people who consent to data collection overall? And it sounds like they're coming from a B2B company. So, I think it sounds like specifically in B2B if possible. So, not to start you with too difficult of one off the top.
No, of course. I wish I remembered numbers for you as I walked into this session. From a B2B perspective, I would say this that ever since GDP, B2B or B2C, ever since GDPR came into the picture, I would not lie, the opt-in rates went down. It went so significantly down because you need a consent to do anything. But over the years, the consumers or the data subjects there in EU are now hyper aware, and the rates have gone up significantly. And the A/B testing capabilities have helped organizations to be very nuanced and very optimized to collect the best amount of consents or opt-in rates for their business holistically over the years. Now, for B2B specifically, I would say this that it boils down to who you're collecting consent from. Is it the individual? Are you maintaining consents by the user in the business, or are you maintaining consents against the business itself? That also makes a big difference. Is I am a B2B and I have like what OneTrust is B2B. We have consent to reach out to businesses, but the end users who are working there, and do they want to hear from us? Do they want newsletters and others? So you need to evaluate both of these and you can optimize for either. It is one, what your MVP looks like, and then two, what do you really want to invest in first off?
Yeah.
So not a direct number, but that's
No,
the best I can do.
and no, I think it's a really good point, and it does depend. I even took a quick look in the eMarketer database, honestly, as you were just talking, and even from a geographic region, there's a broad variance as I just kind of saw, so it really does depend on a number of variables. I think one other really great question that we got in is maybe if you could take a little time to share some examples of successful UX patterns for requesting opt-in when a user has, let's say, previously skipped or not opted in? What are some patterns that you can try to emulate in order to accomplish that?
Yeah. Um, so skipping and not interacting does boil down to the regulatory requirements after a point. So if it's in the EU, your expectations are completely different than what it is in the US. It boils down to, as a business, what do you understand and what does regulatory regulation demand you to understand? If somebody's skipping or Xing out or not interacting, then you default to what the regulation demands in the region. It is opt-in, then you can just go about dropping the cookies, the trackers, and go through with it. If it's an opt-out, if it's an opt-in on the other side, you cannot process any data that they have not explicitly consented for. To improve your UXs, for the cookie side of the world where you have the banners, I would say there's a default 12-month or 6-month reconsent timeline that some regulations impose. You could, on the other side, as an experience for not just the cookies world, where you have to just go by the law, unless somebody clears cache and cookies and you don't remember the session that somebody interacted with it, you restart it. I would say go with the approach for consent that's collected just in time. So you don't have to show one big web form with 30 different options. Or, hey, as a business, you can sign up for loyalty, you can sign up for emails, you can sign up for SMS, you can. If somebody is going through an order fulfillment exercise, they're saying, hey, I'd like to purchase. That's a great time to ask, would you like order updates via SMS or email? And then they can make that choice. And then you can also tell them, well, via email, if you'd like, we can also send you new seasonal offers and others. So just-in-time consent prompts are great, like low friction tactics to get more consent in. The preference center is an it's a game changer because you just tell the user, hey, whenever you are too confused, just go in one location and change and customize it. It's like your own personal diary. You just pick and choose and you're good to go there. And then the other one is in every communication that you have with them, maintain your transparency policy. So if you have, say, changed the scope of how you're going to use the data, you need to inform the user, give them an opportunity, maybe via the email, to collect that fresh consent. So it could be an outbound consent, an inbound consent through web form, or a preference center where they change it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. We actually had something that builds on something that we were talking about alignment and making sure that the teams can get together and agree on a unified consent and data strategy. So, how do you recommend aligning legal, marketing, IT, all these disparate teams? They all have kind of different agendas, but how do you get them to coalesce on around one strategy?
It's hard. I won't say it is easy whatsoever. Getting everybody together who are driven by different KPIs is always hard. Marketing is driven by revenue. Legal compliance wants to make sure the brand's trusted and no fines come through. Like they're not going through any questions there. IT just has to have an optimized system management in place. Like their data architecture has to be spot on. So the best way to get them together is find friends. All of you are working towards a common goal that you want your brand, your organization to be successful. You are saving and kind of championing different phases of it, but the heart and the center is the organization and what you can deliver. And the heart of that organization is the customer. So if you all can align on that, grab a coffee with someone on that team, understand how they're looking at it, marketers as marketers or like customer experience team members, we'd be like, no cookie banners, please. It just bothers the user when it shows up. But from a compliance standpoint, it's like we need it or we can be fine. Like you can't just come in on the table asking for things and not explaining context. So it goes back to why you need it, ask a few whys, why you need it, what's the benefit, how does marketer benefit from it if legal's kind of bringing this to the table or vice versa. If marketer doesn't want it, please tell them why can't you do this and how you can come to a common ground. And as you mature as an organization, I would certainly say think of a task force. Have representatives from each team. You all have like a session once a week, sit down. Legal compliance tells you what's the latest greatest, what's important, what you should be targeting, how you look at it. Data and infrastructure needs to know what data lives in there, needs to bring in their nuances on, hey, we have this data, but we don't have consent, or vice versa. And then marketing can help ensure that the engagements that they're doing, the exercises, are in line with all the activity that's going on around.
Okay, so I think I've got time for one more lightning round question, really just 30 seconds or less. See if you can do this. What KPIs or success metrics should companies track to evaluate the effectiveness of their consent strategy? Are there one or two that come to mind?
Okay, time check me for this. KPIs, things that I look for. Opt-in rates, have they improved? Maybe use A/B testing, audience logic, and others. Preference center engagements, how many people are going in there, engaging, and giving you better opt-ins, and how that's driving your opt-in rates. So it's kind of like a deeper layer there. You could look at overall marketing effectiveness, having your marketing activities informed by consent. How has that helped you? For the legal team, I would say KPIs would be around your audit readiness. Have you done everything? Do you have the due diligence? Do you have the track record of all consents in place? And then for IT, the last one is data accuracy. Do you actually have the right data in the right system with the consent to be in that system for processing?
That was great. Arshdeep, thank you so much for this great content and answering all the questions from our audience. We really appreciate it.
Of course, it has been such a pleasure, Jeremy. I found your questions to be the most difficult. I'll say that.
Okay, that's fair. I'll take it. Before we wrap up, though, let me take a moment to tell you about eMarketer's media channels. You can visit emarketer.com to register for upcoming live analyst and tech talk webinars and sign up for our newsletters. And don't forget to check out our various podcasts, Behind the Numbers, Reimagining Retail, and The Banking and Payment Show. Listen everywhere you find podcasts and watch on Spotify and eMarketer's YouTube channel. Keep an eye out on your email for the link to today's playback, and of course, feel free to contact us if you have any other questions. Thank you for all your time, and thanks again to Arshdeep, the team at OneTrust, and our eMarketer studio team behind the scenes for making this webinar possible. We will see you all on the next Tech Talk.